Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an NPC bodybuilder. Today's guest is Clint Chiasson. Clint, welcome to the podcast.
Hey man, how's it going?
It's going great, Clint. So I'm looking forward to chopping it up with you, man. The first question I'd like to ask you is, who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
Um, Maine would probably be Dorian, and then of course, guys like Jay and Branch, who were kind of a little more my time at the beginning of my bodybuilding. So,
Cool. Awesome, man. Okay, so at what age did you start lifting weights, Clint? And then why did you start lifting weights at that specific age?
I think I was around 14, 13 maybe, and I played year-round baseball and stuff like that. So that was really kind of what got me into it was sports.
Okay.
And then once I kind of finished playing ball in high school, it kind of just transitioned into bodybuilding just to have something to continue being competitive with. Because I kind of thrive on the competitive nature. So,
Very cool, man. Okay, so let's I want to kind of get into, I like to use that question to kind of transition into my guests' childhood and their upbringing. So where did you grow up? And outside of baseball, what are some of the other sports you played? What was your childhood like kind of overall? So paint that picture for us a little bit, and then we'll transition from there, Clint.
okay. As far as other sports go, I really only played baseball. I played year round, 365 days a year for uh, probably 17 years, 16 years, something like that. So it was, I didn't really have time for any other sports. And I'm from South Louisiana. So I live about 30 minutes outside New Orleans. And my family owns cattle and horses and stuff like that. So that took up a lot of my spare time as well growing up. And that's kind of what I came up doing.
Okay, cool. Now baseball. Why? I mean, because most kids growing up, we play, football in the fall, and then basketball in the winter, and then do something golf or track in the spring, baseball in the summer here in Iowa. But was baseball something like that your dad was passionate about, and he kind of pushed you in that direction? Talk about why you got so heavily involved in baseball, and what were some lessons maybe that you learned from those years as a kid playing baseball?
Um, Honestly, it was just the sport that I enjoyed the most. I never really tried football, and I played basketball for a few years when I was young. Uh, but it was kind of just an in between thing. So once that time got filled with more baseball, that's pretty much just all I did. It was just, you know, I kind of have a habit of focusing and going all in on one thing at a time. So once we kind of figured out that baseball was my thing, that's kind of what I dove deep into. So
All right. What positions did you play?
I was a catcher.
Okay,
And
cool.
I pitched some too, but catcher was my main position.
Awesome, man. That's definitely a fun position. So, now you mentioned like cattle and stuff like that. So, did you kind of grow up on a, was it a farm? Was it a ranch? What type of a setting was that?
I guess a little bit of both. My family owned probably almost 1,000 acres and a few hundred head of cattle. So, we still do it to this day. Of course, my dad's in his late 60s now and retired and stuff. So it's getting smaller and smaller as time goes based on what they can handle. But we still do it to this day. So,
Okay, cool, awesome, man. Okay, so what was school like for you when you were younger? Did you enjoy it? Did you do it just because you had to do it like most of us? What were you like as a student when you were younger?
um, I'm sure I did it because I had to, but I didn't mind. I excelled pretty well in school too. So it's just kind of one of those things where you just do what you got to do so that you can do what you want to do on the side.
Right. Got it.
That was we established in
Okay.
my house, especially with the cattle business. It was, yeah, you can do what you want to do, but you're going to get up and come here first because this is what you got to do.
Right.
So,
Now, were your parents were they disciplinarians? I mean, were they kind of strict and pretty tough on you in terms of like, making sure that you were going to learn how to work and have that work ethic? What was it like with your relationship with your parents when you're younger?
um, I mean, my parents were great. They weren't strict or over disciplined or anything like that, but they were um very intense on their views on having a good work ethic and can't ever make a first impression twice. So it was, they instilled that in me early and often. And I mean, I like to think it's one of those things that I still live by today. So
Yeah. Excellent, man. Okay, so once you graduated from high school, Clint, where did life take you? What did you pursue? Did you go to college? What kind of happened those first few years after you got done with the high school years?
um, I went to community college for about a year, but I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. So I just kind of picked a general studies major, and I was actually working full time night shift while trying to go to school during the day, and it just got to the point where it was one or the other. So I got more or less into the trades. I was doing electrical work, and I mean at 18, 19, 20 years old, I was making good money. So I just kind of carried on with that, and it's done pretty well for me. So
Okay.
I didn't finish college or anything like that, but the trades down here is a big thing, and a lot of people with certain trades and certain jobs make
Yeah.
significantly more than a lot of people with degrees out here. So it's kind of it's I guess it's based on your location and what's popular where you're at.
Yeah. Now, are you still in the electrical work then, or do you do the farming, ranching stuff with your family?
I still do the farming ranching with my dad, but I mean my occupation is I work at a chemical plant.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So I'm an operator, so we work shift work, days and nights, rotating shifts. So I mean we work a good bit of hours.
Mhm. Okay. Awesome, man. Love it. A working man's bodybuilder. I appreciate that, and I think it's pretty cool. So, okay, now let's transition kind of into bodybuilding. So it sounds like once you kind of got done with high school, that's when you kind of started moving in the direction of bodybuilding. Am I correct on hearing you say that earlier, Clint?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, about the first year after I graduated, when I didn't have baseball anymore and stuff, I did a lot of partying and a lot of drinking, like most people. So it just got to a certain point where that got old, and I realized that I needed something competitive. And I had always kept up with bodybuilding, and but it was always a thing of like, well, I could never do that. I mean, I graduated, I was 165 pounds, I think. So I was like, oh, I'll never be able to do that. Especially at the level that those guys were in the at that time in the early 2000s and stuff like that. I mean, because all you saw, that was right before social media got really big. So all you saw was top level guys, and you're like, okay, well, this is completely unachievable. So and then as I got a little deeper into it and started going to shows, and I actually a buddy of mine I work with was really heavily into it. He was a lot older than me, so he was one of my my site foremen. So we spent a lot of time together, and he actually helped me prep for my first show. I think I was 20. I prepped for my first show. I think I was like 22, and I actually tore some ligaments in my knee a few weeks out, working with my dad at the pasture, and so that was put on hold that year. So I mean, I did the following year, and that was that was my first show, and then it was on from there. So
Okay. All right. Now, do you remember, first of all, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you, Clint? Because I think we're probably around the same age.
I just turned 33.
Okay, so I've got you by 2 years. I'm 35, so we grew up kind of in that Jay Cutler, Ronnie Coleman era, right, for bodybuilding, which I don't think we'll ever have an era like that again. It was pretty cool. But what I want to ask you then is, do you remember like the first pro bodybuilder, like IFBB pro that you remember seeing? Like, was it on a magazine cover? Do you remember who it was, and if so, who was it?
Um, it was probably, I mean, of course, all the famous pictures of Dorian, like you have behind you, but I think the first magazine cover I saw was probably one from Jay.
Okay, cool, awesome. Those. I've had several conversations because a lot of the guys that come on the podcast, they're late 20s, early 30s, around our age, and they grew up with the magazines. But I have some guys on that are like 22, 23, and the other day I was having a conversation. I almost said something about a magazine, then in my head I'm like, wait a minute, this guy's like 22. He doesn't even it's all bodybuilding is all social media with him. He doesn't even know magazines. He doesn't know, the Jay Cutler, Ronnie Coleman DVDs and all of that stuff. So I had to catch myself on that one. It's just crazy, man, how in such a short amount of time, life changes, bodybuilding's changed so much because of social media. But anyways, so that's really cool. Now, so you kind of went through your first prep, and then you got injured and you had to pull out. So why don't you talk about your actual first competition? How did it go? Did you have fun? Did you enjoy it? Walk us through the first actual bodybuilding competition that you did.
So my first prep was intense. Like he was a little old school. The cheat meals didn't exist. You know, we ate nothing but cardboard and chicken. I did that for I think 14 weeks, and then we led straight into the show. It was and it was a lot of it was because of our work schedule. I mean, we worked 7 days a week, uh, 10 to 15 hours a day. So it was, simplicity was important, and it always has been for me because my work schedule has always been crazy, and I've always worked a lot of hours. So the simplicity aspect for me is always, been important. Most of my diets consist of about 8 different things. So, because it's about just, I mean, making sure I can eat what I need to eat when I need to eat it, and I don't have to prep, 100 different things. So, but yeah, I mean, that was it. I mean, I started out, like I said, cheat meals didn't exist. As I got deeper into it and we started, incorporating that stuff, that was all foreign to me. Okay. The way I learned was you didn't cheat, you didn't do anything. Like if you needed to add some food, you ate some extra rice or some extra rice cakes, and which is, I mean, pretty much still how we do things for the most part for me. But a lot of it is because of the simplicity. It's a lot easier for me to cook and eat some extra rice than sometimes it is for me to leave and go get food or order food or, whatever it is. So,
yeah. So the first time that you stepped on stage, how did it go for you? Did you enjoy that first actual bodybuilding competition where you stepped on stage?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was I enjoyed the prep, and once I did the first show, I was hooked. So,
how much do you remember how much you weighed for that first bodybuilding competition?
I want to say I was around 180, 182. Of course, that first show, you've always got some more to lose because you still got a ton of baby fat, and that first prep stuff that you can't get off and that you don't know how to get off at that time. So it's for a first show, I think I was I looked pretty good, but it's always hard to look back and be like, oh yeah, you look good. Like, no.
Right.
So but yeah, I think I was in the middle of light heavies. Well, at that time it was novice, so I was a novice heavyweight, but I was right at the bottom. So I think I was between like 180, 182.
Cool. So you, I mean, from the time that you were in high school till the time you competed, you obviously put on some serious muscle mass then, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you look at it that way, considering that, high school athlete shape wasn't show shape by any stretch. I mean, I was in good shape, but it was totally different. So yeah, I mean, I guess it would have been about 4 years between. I'd probably added, I guess, 15 pounds or so quality.
Not too shabby, I'd say, right? So, okay, so after that first competition, you said you were hooked. Now, I want to ask you before we continue in the competitive line of talk here. When you first started kind of transitioning from lifting weights for athletics into training for bodybuilding, what were you kind of like an old school trainer? Was it like barbell squats and a lot of barbell dumbbell work? What was your training like back then in the early days? And then has your training changed and evolved over the years? And if so, how has it changed and evolved, Clint?
Yeah, I mean, early on, that was the basis for everything. Dumbbell, barbell, everything was compound movements, a little bit of cable accessory work. But I mean, at that time, like the and this is what I tell people today. I'm like, the knowledge and information that they have access to today that didn't exist. That was trade secrets. And if you were lucky, you got to get into professional muscle and get some borderline sketchy information that would have you pushing limits beyond means of most pros. So it's the information that they have available today is great. And especially compared to what we had. So I mean, yeah, it was more, compound, heavy dumbbell, heavy barbell, simple movements, because that was really all we knew. And then the little workouts that they put in the magazines that you learned from were 3 or 4 sets of 10 to 12, 8 to 12, and it was mostly those type of movements, probably some because that was what they did, but also some because it was an easy write up to write a bunch of different, workouts for people to follow.
So, has your training evolved then over the years? How are you training kind of currently?
Um, yeah, I mean, somewhat. I still stick to heavy compounds, but it has evolved a lot. I mean, since then I've done training with JP, Matt Jansen. Um, I followed Peterson and DC training, which the DC was early on because that was the bread and butter of the information that you had, because Dante put out everything. He didn't really hold no secrets, which was great for back then. So it's I still follow that because that's been the bread and butter, and that's how I enjoy training. But it has evolved a lot. It's a lot more calculated now, a lot more calculated risk as I get older, and I'm not old by any stretch, but it's as you get older, you start acquiring little ticks and injuries, and things start showing themselves. Like I got a bad shoulder from just years of constant wear and tear of baseball, and training improperly early on because you just want to get stronger and you want to be stronger, and so you're ego lifting, and so on and so forth. I mean, all the things that most people deal with transitioning from early weightlifting into more advanced.
Yeah. So, now let's take a step back then. So after your first competition, when was the next time you competed? Why don't you just kind of unpack competition history a little bit for us, because I know from your IG in 2018 at Nationals, you got third as a heavyweight. So you missed your pro card by one placing in 2018, or were they just giving out one pro card for the class winner at that time?
No, it was two. I think it was either a 1 or 2 point split, and it was actually funny story. It was a buddy of mine from down here that we went and competed together. We competed the weekend before at a qualifying show, and I beat him the weekend before, and then he beat me at Nationals, and I think it was either a 1 or 2 point split. Mike Toscano won that year. He was pretty cut and dry first place. And then from what I gather, everyone felt it was pretty neck and neck for me and the guy who got second. So it was close, and it was a weird moment, taking a loss to your friend, but also being happy, and happy you got third, but also disappointed that you were that close and couldn't close the deal. It's a really weird place to be in. I've talked about that with a few people. It's almost better to be fourth or fifth than it is to be third and be that close.
Yeah. So after your first competition, then talk to us a little bit about some of the other competitions that you've done. Before we get more into that 2018 competition and where we're at today. So after the first one, what did you do competitively?
First year I did just the novice. Like I said, novice heavyweight. I think I won my class there. I think it was only like 5 people, which was pretty big for novice, because now it's gotten a little more popular again. I think they've kind of shed some light on when you're just starting out to try to do novice. But for a while, the novice had kind of died off. But yeah, so I think I won my class there. And then I actually went back the following year, did the same show, because it was a local, like, non-qualifier. So it was kind of we had 2 local non-qualifiers in Louisiana at the time. So those 2 shows are what people did like early on. So I did that show, and then I went back the following year. I won the overall there, and then I did another qualifier shortly after that. I won my class there as a light heavy, and then lost the overall to he was either a heavyweight or a super. Just an absolute God-given freak of nature. He's done nationals a few times. So Maurice Pollock. And so I lost to him, and I think that was it for that year. The following year I did Greater Gulf States, which was a pro-am at the time down here in Louisiana. It was one of the 2 bigger shows that we had. I won the overall there. And then the following year after that, I did the Louisiana State, which was the other big show. I won the overall there. And then we decided that the year after that, I was going to take a shot at Nationals, because that was what I told I was needed to do. Hindsight, I wish I would have did juniors, and I kind of always felt that way, but I took the guidance and instruction that I received from, the judges and people who had been bodybuilding and stuff. And that was actually where, and me and Nate kind of knew each other online just from Facebook, but that was me and Nate's, both our first national show. And we both got smashed together.
Are you referring to Nate Spear?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. Okay, so what year was that then that you and Nate competed in your first pro qualifier?
I think that was 2015.
Okay.
I want to say. It may have been 16 though.
Okay.
It was one of those 2, and we both did nationals. He was a heavyweight. I was a light heavyweight. We both did not place. But I think that they were really big classes. I think I had 38
Wow.
in the light heavyweights that year. And it was really deep. I want to say, I don't know. There was quite a few names that I remember competing with there that are, top pros today. Some of them in classic, some of them in bodybuilding. But yeah, so that was both our first national show. Like I said, Nate was a heavyweight and I was a light heavy, and we both didn't place. So, and hindsight, like I said, I wish I would have did juniors. But I mean, you know, my knowledge of the national circuit was limited, so I just kind of took the guidance that everyone offered me, and everyone said, "Oh, you're ready. You need to go to nationals," and I did, and I learned that I wasn't ready. So, and I went, and it's one of the things that I try to tell people today. I'm like, unless you're filthy rich and you have money to throw around, I'm like, go and watch a national show, because seeing it in person is a totally different ball game. I mean, I went the year before I competed, and I remember I've told this story probably 100 times. I remember I went to the bathroom. I think it was during the welters, and I came back out, and I was like, "Oh wow, we're on the light heavyweights already. That was quick." And they were like, "Oh no, this is the beginning of middles." So it really put in perspective. I was like, "Oh, okay." I was like, "Yeah, well, we got a long way to go." So
Yeah. Okay, so now after the guy that kind of helped you locally for your first competition, who are some of the other coaches that you've worked with, if you have, Clint?
After, so he helped me for my first show. Then after that, I worked with Cash Guidry.
Yeah.
Uh, he's a local coach, but he's got a lot of upper level guys. He worked with Sadiq, Logan. His forte. He actually coached Maurice too for a while. Um, I think he does a lot more. He's got a few bodybuilders here and there, but I think he does a lot more men's physique and some classic guys now. I think I worked with him for a year and a half, 2 years maybe. And then I had switched over to another guy that I became really good friends with, Jacob Ozan, but he was a local guy, and we became really good friends. I think I worked with Jacob probably 3, maybe almost 4 years. I think 3 years. And then after the first national show, we kind of talked, and he told me, he's like, "Look, man," he said, this is as far as I can take you. He's like, "If you were, a God-given freak, maybe we could push this a little further." He said, "But I don't have what you need to be able to move you to that next level." So that was around the time when Lunsford popped onto the scene, and another friend of mine started working with James. Really liked him, so I was like, okay. I was like, well, I'll give it a shot, and I worked with James for 4 years. That was I think we did 5 national shows together, and then after the last one, I worked with Andrew Berry for a little while, and then that was when things kind of got crazy and fell off. So
Okay. Now, okay, so after your 2016 appearance at on the national stage, walk us through kind of what happened after 2016. You kind of realized like you weren't ready for that national stage. So did you take some time off? Did you step right back on a stage in 2017? Walk us up to that national show in 2018, then starting from your first national level competition in 2016.
okay, so 2016, like I said, I got the do not place as a light heavyweight. I started with James pretty much immediately after that show, so that he could take me out of the show, full rebound, off season, everything. And I put on a lot of muscle that first year with Jacob. The goal was to be middle of the heavyweight class, and so we kind of were like, okay, well, we'll do a national show next year if things go good, and they went really well. I ended up doing USA's that year, I believe. As a heavyweight, I think I was like 208, 210, somewhere in that area. I got either 10th or 11th that year. So that was when I kind of realized, okay, well, maybe I can continue moving forward and be relevant. Then so that was 17. And then we left straight out of USA's, and I picked Nationals as the show in 2018. And so that was the goal from day one leaving Vegas. We were going to do Nationals in 18, and I came in to Nationals, I think, right at 223, 224. It was the best, hands down, the best off-season prep I've had. It was seamless, no nags, no injuries, no digestive issues. Like, it was just absolutely flawless for 17 months. So it was and then we got third there. So we decided that we would run it right back into, carry the momentum and do USA's in 19. And I got, I think, 10th there. But I had kind of moved up to that borderline where I was sucking down in the heavyweights and didn't quite have enough time to fill back out. So I was, flat. And the one thing about my physique is if I'm not 100%, I can't be competitive. It's I have what I gather, a distinct look, and it relies on being full and grainy and hard. And if I don't have that pop, then it's just, I'm not even in the conversation. So we did that. And then I think the following year, 2020, we went back to Nationals as a super. And I did it again with Nate. He got third that year, and I think I was 9th or 10th, something like that. So, but that was a really deep lineup. Again, they had Nate, Barrow, Brent, Vincent. There was a lot of big name supers that were there. So, I wasn't quite where I wanted to be come showtime, but I looked good, and I just wasn't quite ready to, I guess, move into that upper or lower first call out yet. So, I think I got 9th there. And then after that show, like I said, I started working with Barry, and I think me and Barry worked together 4 months or so. And then life just kind of took over. We pretty much crammed all life instances that you can have into 1 year. I had a baby. We planned a wedding. I got engaged. I built a house. We had a hurricane. I started a new job. My wife started a new job. So it was just absolutely crazy. And I was like, you know what? I was like, I just can't commit to it right now. And I had talked to Andrew about it. He's like, dude, it's cool. Just, take care of what you need to take care of. Like, none of this is going anywhere. So I had pretty much decided that I was more than likely done. And then my wife actually talked me into it. She was like, I really want you to compete again. And I was like, I don't know. I was like, it takes too much away from everything, from y'all, from, it's just a lot. And about 11 weeks out from this show, I hit Nate up, and I was like, I sent him some pictures, and we talk every day. So I sent him some pictures, and I was like, look, if you're down to do this, I'll do it. If you think we can do it and it'd be a respectable showing, coming back from nothing, then I'll do it. I said, so, if you want to start prep, and we'll just leave it in prep's hands, we'll follow it. And if come the end of prep, we don't like how I look, then we'll just shut it down, no biggie. So, everything's going pretty well. But I mean, like I said, me and Nate have clicked really well. We've been involved in each other's prep since 2016. So he knows me and my body very well. So it's worked really well.
Hmm. So Nate Spears is your coach right now. So what show are you going to step back on stage here in about? I think you said you're about 10 days out. What competition are you gonna compete in? And then is the goal to jump on that national stage again? Then here early December.
No nationals. I don't know. So if I decide to do nationals and do what it takes, then I want to know that I can put myself back in the conversation. You know, even just top five. That's where the fun is. First call out, top five. It's anything outside of there is just paying money to show up. Um, so we pretty much established that from the jump. Like, it was just going to be a local show, no commitment. I mean, it was, we were going to be committed to the prep, and that was it. So it's just a local show. It's called Southern Muscle. I mean, I don't really know how many people are going to be there. Hopefully it's a good turnout, but after that we'll shut it down, and we'll see where things go from there. So.
Okay. Now, you've come a long way because you said in high school you're like 160 some pounds, and your first competition you're like 180, and then you've worked yourself up to being like 220 or something like that on stage. So you've come a long way. But I guess what I kind of want to know, Clint, you kind of start dabbling in this bodybuilding thing. It's like, man, I want to get bigger, and I want to get stronger, and then you kind of see your body changing, and then you start competing and you're enjoying it. But at what point did you kind of say to yourself, like, man, like, I love this, and I want to take this, as far as I can? Because once you start competing regularly on that national level stage at those pro qualifiers, like that's the elite of the elite for the amateur ranks, right? And that's a whole nother level than doing the local stuff. So at what point did you kind of like determine, like, I'm going to see how far I can take this, and how has bodybuilding kind of maybe given you an outlet, given you an identity? Like, how has bodybuilding maybe changed your life or changed your perspective? So when did you kind of decide you're going to just like go all in with bodybuilding, and what has bodybuilding kind of taught you or given you, or how has it maybe changed your life or your perspective over the years?
Um, so I think when I started out, I didn't really have much expectation. Uh, and then, like I said, I won my first show. The class, at least, I won that. So I was like, okay. I was like, well, that's cool, but it's a non-qualifier.
Yeah.
It's just novice. So I was like, all right. So we went back, and then I won the novice overall. So I'm like, okay, I'll keep going with it. And the main thing for me was I just enjoyed training, and I enjoyed dieting, and living the lifestyle. So the competing was a byproduct early on, and it was an outlet of consistency. So as it just progressed, and I started continuously progressing and doing a little better and a little better, I just kind of kept diving a little deeper into it. And after my second or third overall locally, I was like, okay, well, maybe I can make a run at this. And like I said, people started telling me about nationals, and you need to do it, and this and that. And so I did. I dove in, and I went, and like I said, we got manhandled. But at that point, it was kind of the turning point where I was like, okay, I'm gonna really dive in, and I'm gonna give this a solid run. And if next year I get smashed again, then I'll know that, like, okay, well, this is just as far as I can take it. So my goal was just always to take it as far as I could. I want to turn pro, but realistically for me, I know that turning pro is probably the end for me. I might be able to do one or two pro shows, but I'll never be a relevant pro. I'll probably never even be a good pro. So I know that other than just to do it, it would probably be the end of the road for me as far as, successful showings go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or successful outcomes. So it's, I've been pretty realistic with it. I mean, I have a lot of, responsibilities and stuff like that in life that come first. Or at least try to put them first as hard as it can be sometimes. So that, like I said, my goal was always to be a pro, but I've been pretty realistic about it as well.
Right. So, what do you feel like bodybuilding has kind of taught you then over the years? I mean, outside of kind of giving you structure and quote unquote discipline, which I think you had that discipline from a young age because of your upbringing, from what you shared. But what do you feel like just this whole bodybuilding experience has kind of taught you up to this point in terms of like some life lessons, or how has it maybe help shape you into the husband, the dad, the man that you are at this point in life?
I think a lot of the things that bodybuilding teaches was already kind of instilled in me early on. So I think it's just been a way to continue, like education. Some people read, just to continue to further their education, they research and they try to learn. And I guess it's kind of along the same lines. It's just continuously refreshing the discipline and the work ethic needed. And, that at the end of the day, there's always somebody that's doing more. And even besides that, that there's somebody who might not be doing more and they're probably still going to be better than you. And that is just the nature of the beast. So, when you accept that, it kind of, if you can be the kind of person to accept that and still push, then that's great. Some people, like to wade in on, their success as their driving factor. Not everybody's wired the same. And that's what I tell everybody, just whatever you need to do to continue to push forward and be successful, whatever mindset you need to get into, whatever fuel you need to take from it, then that's what you need to do. It's like, it's different for everyone. So, I mean, for me, I think it's just been a constant reminder of the discipline and work ethic and how it just carries in every aspect of life, work, finances, home life, family. I hate to say family because a lot of times during prep, they take the neglect for it, but, it still teaches you to just continue to do the best you can, with the 24 hours you're given every day. So, I mean, I don't know that it's taught me anything new. I think it's just been a constant refresher of the things that I've kind of tried to follow anyway.
Love that. So I'm curious, why was your wife kind of the one that pushed you back into getting into competitive bodybuilding? I mean, you don't always hear of that. A lot of times the significant others don't want their spouse or whatever, what have you, bodybuilding or at least competing, because it's a huge sacrifice for everybody. But why did your wife kind of push you in that direction again? I'm kind of curious about that.
I think, I mean, she's never told me why. What I gather from it, if I had to take a guess, I think she knew that it was something that I wanted to, continue doing and probably some unfinished business. She didn't want to feel like, us having a son and getting married and all of these things were taken away from, the things that I enjoy doing as well, because, men typically need a hobby of some sort, whether it's hunting or fishing or, whatever it is, going to play basketball or whatever. And this is my hobby. I mean, this is, other than go to work and take care of things here at home, it's really all that I do. So I think that she didn't want to see me give that up completely, unless she knew that I was like 100% ready, committed to it. And she had went to a show. I was working, so she had went to a show just to see one of her friends compete, and she came home and she was like, I miss it. I want you to get back into it. And it does teach a lot of things. And us having a son, I think that she knows that there's a lot that he can learn just from watching. Because I mean, my dad worked a lot, and then with the pasture and stuff like that, it was, growing up, there was times where he wasn't there, but you realize later on in life that like he did it for you, and just watching, you learned a lot from it. And so I think that she kind of knew that. And so I think it was a mixture of reasons. But I mean, she's great. She knew that I loved it, and she enjoyed it. She's done a few shows here and there, and she'll probably never compete again, after the baby, and if we have another one, stuff like that. So, I think that was her outlet too, to still be able to be involved. So I guess in that manner, I'm the sacrificial lamb. But yeah, she's been great. She's been supportive, all the way through. We've hit our little bumps in the road during prep, and it gets hard. But this year has been, pretty seamless on her end. So I think she takes into account that she sees me, not sleeping and running ragged, an hour cardio, and I work 12 to 18-hour days, and so it's I think she knows, and she takes into account that she can't really, she don't really fuss about nothing. So
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool, man, to have somebody like that in your life that supports you in what you call your hobby. So I love that. So you mentioned an hour of cardio. Is that kind of the max of cardio that you've gotten up to in this specific prep, Clint, or are you doing more than just an hour?
no, an hour's the max. We actually just went to an hour of stairs, which is typically a lot for me. But just trying to kind of put the finishing touches on, I guess.
So how up to this point, I mean, when you look at your physique and you send update pics to Nate, I mean, what are you guys seeing? Is your body responding pretty well after having an extended period of time off?
Yeah, actually, it's surprisingly well. This, and I mean, of course, it's never done till it's done. But I looking at what I look like now, this is since 2018. This is probably one of my favorite looks. You know, I'm an all in kind of person, so from when I decided to, like, there was zero time off. It was constantly pushing. I pushed from being a lower end light heavyweight all the way into supers in 7 years. So for 7 years, it was eating and training and eating and training and prepping and rebounding and eating, and it was constant. I mean, at one point, my normal daily diet in the off season was about 6,200 calories a day. So I mean, your digestion kind of wavers. Sometimes, I mean, you get sick, or it might just happen anyway. So I think that honestly, the time off did me some good. My waistline kind of came back in a little bit. My midsection's a lot tighter. So I'm a little smaller than I was the last one or two times I competed, but I think I'm on track to be maybe not my best, but maybe one of my favorite looks. Nice. So it's a lot more streamlined, I think, and like I said, the midsection is a big part of it. So, I've never had a small waist. It was just not my look. So, hopefully we can change that a little bit. And I've been able to do a lot more with less food, which is new to me, because normally it's dieting on 500-600 grams of carbs, and refeeds are between 1,000 and 1,200 multiple times a week, and start chasing your metabolism. And we haven't had to do any of that.
Cool. So talk a little bit more, if you don't mind, about maybe a little bit. You just mentioned a little bit of a difference with Nate and how this prep's going in terms of not eating as much food. But what are some of the other differences from maybe previous preps that you have noticed working with Nate, or what does maybe Nate have you doing that's different from previous preps with other coaches?
The one thing that I've noticed is my fats have stayed a lot higher. And I think that that's probably a contributing factor to me being able to eat less food. My protein's a little lower than normal. And he told me from the jump, he's like, we're going to start it here and kind of see, and we'll make changes as we need. And the changes were minimal. I mean, my body just started responding immediately, and everything just kind of kept flowing. So, my fats haven't been adjusted much, and I'm kind of staying relatively around, I think 350 grams of carbs a day. And then I have low days on my non-training days, and we have refeeds where we'll add a few hundred grams of carbs here, but it's at no point really have I been under eating to the point where I'm miserably starving, nor have I been overeating to the point where I just don't want to eat anymore. So it's been kind of nice, kind of refreshing.
Yeah. What you said you like simplicity. So what are kind of why don't you give me what are your main protein sources, your main fat sources, and your main carb sources for this prep? Because you said you eat kind of like the same foods, and again, keep it simple. So what are your macro go-to foods for this prep?
So for meal one, it's just been eggs and egg whites, English muffins if I have carbs with my first meal. My carb source is pretty much rice, and cream of rice for post workout. And then as far as my protein sources, it's either chicken or beef.
Nice.
So it's really for me, and then protein with my cream of rice. So it's really only about 7 foods.
Yeah.
So and luckily I can cook at work and stuff. So that's been a lot better too. But I mean, yeah, it's about as simple as it can get, and that was one of the main things that we had talked about from the jump. I was like, if it's got to get a little more in depth, then it's just the nature of the beast. But as simple as we can keep it, because I don't want to be buying 15 different foods and having to prep a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So it's mainly been fruit, chicken, beef, rice, eggs, egg whites, protein, and cream of rice, and that's really it.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds like a pretty plain Jane, simple bodybuilding eating regimen there, Clint, right?
Yeah, that's it.
What in terms of like protein powder or supplements, what do you have like a brand that you kind of like to use for your protein or other supplements, or do you just kind of get whatever's the best bargain at the time?
Um, it just depends. I mean, there's a supplement shop that's attached to our gym. So kind of, I mean, whatever he has at the time. As far as like my Entra, my aminos, I usually go with the Aminotor and Raging Full from AD. But I mean, if they don't have that, then it just depends. He carries a lot of good stuff. The Hostile brands, the AD brands, and stuff like that. So it's I haven't really worried too much about that. The availability has been the big part, because it's a lot of people have been trouble getting their protein, and supply chain issues and manufacturing issues. So with all of that going on, I kind of knew, I was like, I just need to focus on getting what I need to, however I need to get it.
Right, right. Makes sense. We're gonna start wrapping things up here shortly, Clint, but I want to ask you, what's the overall bodybuilding scene like down in Louisiana? I don't hear, of a lot of guys coming out of Louisiana in terms of IFBB pros, but is there a pretty strong bodybuilding scene down there, or not really?
Um, in the past, we've had a good bit of decent bodybuilders. I mean, like everywhere, it's kind of dwindled some, with a lot more people going classic and men's physique and stuff like that. I mean, overall, the bodybuilding competition scene is kind of small. I mean, a show might average between 80 and 120 people. So it's nothing huge by any stretch. So, and that was one of the things that I always kind of took into account too. I'm not competing in New York and Texas, and so I tried to take that into account too, as far as my performance, and like, yeah, just because I'm winning these 3 shows doesn't mean that I'm ready.
Right.
You know, just because I'm nationally qualified doesn't mean I'm nationally competitive. So it's you know, but yeah, I mean, we've had a few good guys. Like I said, they had the guy locally who turned pro with the second place. Caleb Blanchard turned pro, I think, as a light heavyweight at USA's in 2016, maybe. So there's been a few. Kyle Etienne has been close a few different times. He worked with Blue, but I think he just moved to Vegas and he's actually going to try to get back into it because he had taken a sabbatical as well. So you know, it's not huge down here, and we don't have a big fund or big outlet for it. You know, so everybody's kind of on their own. You know, there's not a ton of you know media coverage and support down here. You know, the NPC locally is great. I mean, they support us a lot, but you know, other than that, it's yeah, like I said, it's relatively small.
Yeah. So you mentioned your gym that has a nutrition shop attached to it. Do you have a pretty bodybuilding friendly local gym there that you train at?
Yeah, actually, he's a competitor as well. Valhalla Training Grounds. And I mean, you can look it up. It's popular, and it's one of the gyms that people travel to come to. So when they come in, they train there normally. The only other big gym that we really have is Red Lareals in Lafayette, and that is a warehouse. It's I think it's almost 10,000 square feet. It's huge. It's 5 different rooms and racket balls. They've got like 10 or 12 pools, tennis courts. It's a yeah, it's a coliseum. So you know that one is one of the biggest gyms in the country, if not the world. I think they're ranked on size and quality in the world. But other than that, that's really about it. Then the like I said, the local gym that I train at, Valhalla, is it's a nice gym. He really caters to uh, our type of training. So it's he's been great. It's like I said, he competes and everything, so he gets it.
Excellent, man. Are there any guys currently, Olympia competitors or guys in the IFBB that you, because we mentioned Dorian Yates, Jay Cutler, Branch Warren earlier, kind of when we were first getting into bodybuilding, but are there any of the guys currently in the IFBB that you really, kind of look up to or respect the way they train or respect the way they look? Who are some of the young up and coming guys that you kind of like current day, Clint?
Um, I guess it's kind of changed because it's not really um, you know, you don't really fanboy over them as you get older, and I've competed with or against or around a lot of them now. You know, I've talked to a lot of them, so it's kind of a different vibe, I guess. You know, but I mean, I follow all of the top guys. You know, Hunter and Nick and you know Derek, and so I mean, it's definitely changed. So as far as like a you know admiration or fanboy, I don't know that there's anybody. I mean, look, I respect all of them, so don't get me wrong. It's just the dynamic has definitely changed from when you're a kid looking up to these guys that you have never met or may never meet or probably won't ever meet, or you know, so it's a different dynamic. But like I said, I mean, I've competed with or against a lot of them. You know, I've trained with some of them and around them, and so it's you know, I have a lot of respect for, I mean, all of them because I know what it takes to. Well, I have an idea what it takes to be at that level. So, you
Right.
know, I've never been at that level, but you know, I can kind of put into perspective with it. So,
Right. No, that definitely makes a lot of sense. What do you feel like are some of your strong points in terms of your physique personally?
um, I mean, I think I've got you know, a different look, uh, which I think has made me stand out sometimes as much as it's hurt me sometimes. You know, it's for me, it's more. I've always felt like it's more who I'm competing against. If I've got a lineup full of tiny little waists and pretty little muscle bellies, then I'm probably going to stand out in the wrong direction. I've got decent legs, and my waist isn't that small. I'm usually dry and grainy, and so I have that distinct look. So I guess it's my favorite. It's what I've always wanted. That was when I started bodybuilding. I was like, you know what, I want to be nasty, grainy freak, and that was the goal from day one. And I guess I've quote unquote achieved that to the best of my ability. So, I think it'll be a little bit different this year from what my norm has been, but I think it'll be a lot more of the same too. So, I'm curious to see what the end result will look like. But like I said, I mean, that's I guess it's my strong suits have also been my weaknesses at times. It's when you stand in a lineup, it's lineup dependent and it's preference dependent. And if you fit in, and in 2018, I think I fit in well. It complemented, because our lineup was a lot of similar physiques. And then, years following, it was a little prettier and tiny little waists and great little muscle bellies and structures. And, so it's, I think that part has hurt me as well too. So it's, and like I said, I mean, that was the only year that I can ever look back and say that I was, quote unquote 100%, I guess, is, at my best. But, I think, it just varies for me. It's, like I said, it's lineup dependent.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Last kind of, I got two more questions here and then we're going to wrap it up. So you've been on like we said, you've been on the national stage quite a few times. Is there somebody, whether they were in your weight class or not, but at the national level, was there any physique that really stood out? Like when you saw that person like on stage or backstage, you're like, dude, like that's just a whole nother level. Like, is there anybody when I ask that question that pops up in your mind? So kind of like the freakiest amateur bodybuilder that you've seen in person, if there is one.
Well, it'll be a big surprise to you. I was competing. Well, I worked with James too at the time, but I competed at USA's when Derek won. So big surprise there. He's probably the most impressive person I've ever seen in person. But there's been quite a few. Hunter. I was there when Hunter turned pro. Just crazy in person, and he's light years ahead of where he was there. I competed same show when Nick turned pro. He looks like a cartoon character. It's like I said, it's I've attended a lot of national shows where these guys were, and but like I said, I mean, when you bring that up, of course it's Lunsford that comes to mind. But on top of that is Hunter and Nick. There's a few others that I probably just can't think of off the top of my head, but those I'll say those three come to mind initially, because they're, well, I mean, it kind of speaks for themselves. So,
speaking of Derek, how do you think he's going to do in the Open Olympia this year? Do you think he's going to get into the top 3 or the top 5? Because I'm pretty. He's not my favorite bodybuilder by any means, but you can't deny greatness, especially when somebody has structure like him. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the top 3, top 5 at the Open Men's this year. What say you, Clint?
I've said it a few times. To see him outside of the top 5 would be surprising to me. I think that he'll probably end up in the top 3. I mean, things change in a few years, but he's already beaten Hottie. So I think that makes a case for him being relevant in the top 3. I think we've always talked about what Derek could look like at 228, 230, and everybody's always talked about what someone like Flex could look like in the Open, and Jose and Clarita, and we got to see both of them in the open, fare pretty well. So, I mean, I can't picture him outside the top 5. I think he'll be in the top 3. Like I said, I'd be really, really surprised. Because the thing with Derek is Derek's off is never really off. He's got that bubbly, full, maybe softer look from the front, but it could be a whole different ball game. I mean, last year it was a totally different person. And from the rear, he's peeled all the time. I've probably never seen someone's glutes get as shredded as his do. Glutes and hams. His legs have always looked a little narrow, but last year they didn't. So, it's I think it'll be surprising, but we'll see. I mean, like I said, I think he'll be in the top 3. I think he's a sure shot for the top 5. So, I mean, he stood next to most of these guys in guest posings and, stuff like that, and never looked out of place as a 212 guy. So, when everybody's in shape and, at a guest posing rather, when everyone's full blown, you would think that they should be blowing the doors off of him, and they're not. So it's, I'm curious to see with everybody in shape, what'll be the comparison. I think it'll be interesting. We've seen Hottie move from the 212 to the open and do really, really well. So I don't see why someone like Derek can't do the same.
Right. I'm with you, man. Okay. Last, kind of a fun question I like to ask people, and then I'll let you go here, Clint. Do you have any gym pet peeves? What are your top 2 gym pet peeves, if you have any?
Trying to think of what it could be off my list.
Probably the Gen Zers with their tripods. Is that one for you?
That's a huge one. Standing in the middle of the gym, posing with their shirts off, and look, I was young too. I try to take it to account, but sometimes I just look and I cringe, and I'm like, I know I was young and feeling myself, but I don't know if I was ever this bad. So, it's that's definitely a big one. And I just feel like the gym courtesy has kind of gone out the window. Like when I was coming up, we had so much respect for the older guys, especially if we were wanting to compete or admiring competing and they competed. We kind of stayed in our lane and knew our place. That's gone. Yeah. That does not seem to exist. Even at the most hardcore of hardcore gyms, it kind of steals from the atmosphere some. But that's the nature of it. So I guess we'll have to adjust, because I'm sure the up and coming young generations will not be adjusting to anything. So we'll just have to keep sucking it up and do the best we can. But yeah, those 2 are probably on up top of my list.
Yep. Those are probably the top 2 for most of the guys in our generation that I have on the podcast for sure. So before I do a really quick outro here, Clint, I do want to give you the opportunity. If you have any final thoughts, any final words that you want to leave with us, any shout outs, any thank yous, I'm going to turn it over to you. And then before you sign off, I'm going to do a quick outro, and that'll be a wrap. So also make sure you give us your Instagram so that we can connect with you on IG. So anything that you want to leave with us in closing, go for it, Clint.
I mean, pretty simple for me. I just want to thank everybody who's, been there and supported me over the years. And, my wife and Nate and all my other coaches who have taken a big part in my progress over the years. So it's, there's really not much more that you can say for that. They all know. I mean, I've had those conversations with them as well. My IG is Clint, Clint, period, Chiasson, Chiasson, 1131. I am not very active. I'm sure after the show, I'll probably post some stuff. But generally for me, I hadn't posted because I haven't really done anything. Yeah, I've been focused on life. And, for me, generally speaking, I guess the old school mindset, I kind of, I tried to wade in with the Instagram early on. So I was like, oh, it's really important and it's business and it's exposure and it gets exhausting, especially when prep's exhausting and life's exhausting on top of that. You just kind of, so that for me is the first thing to go. So, a lot of times if I'm not posting, I might be in prep. It's, and I don't really post anything because I don't really want the input externally, whether it be positive, negative, whatever it is. I don't want the smoke or the mirrors. It's, I just want to keep my head down and keep pushing forward. I'm not a big name or a big face. I don't have a bunch of fans that I need to make sure see, what I'm eating that day and what I'm training that day. And hey, like it's great for those that do. I had hoped at one point that I would get there, but so I'll pop in from time to time, and if things continue to go well and I continue to dig a little deeper, maybe I'll be a little more active again. But so
Love it, man. Keeping it simple and just doing life and living bodybuilding. So I think it's pretty cool, man. I'm really glad that I got you on today, Clint. I just want to say thank you so much for coming on, sharing your life story, your bodybuilding story with us. It was a lot of fun getting to know you and hearing a little bit about you. And good luck here in 10 days. Okay.
hey man, well I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. All of you who are tuning in to this episode with Clint on Behind the Muscle podcast, I just want to say thank you so very much. Just here quickly as we wrap up this chat with Clint today, if you haven't done so already, please make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube in terms of Behind the Muscle podcast. And then also take this episode with Clint, share it on your Instagram stories. Make sure you tag Clint. Go ahead and tag Clint's good friend and coach, Nate Spear, who's been on the podcast 3 or 4 times, so that we know that you listened specifically to this episode and found great value in it. And also make sure you tag Behind the Muscle as you share this episode. And then finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.